Welcome to this episode of The Compressor Guru. Today, we have a special guest, my big brother, Erick McKay. Erick will be educating us on contactors, or magnetic starters, or definite purpose starters. They're all the same thing. Now, here is The Compressor Guru with Erick McKay.
Hi there, I'm Bud and I am the Compressor Guru. Welcome to today's episode. I'd like to introduce you to our guest star, the Definite Purpose Starter. Now, that's a piece of equipment. Who I want to introduce you to is the Erick McKay. Erick is my brother-in-law, my friend, all-around good guy. Erick, I appreciate you coming back in.
Nice to be back.
He's done a recent episode on us with pressure switches. He's going to continue with the education of the guru audience with other things about compressors and not every compressor. We already went over that.
That's right.
But a lot of compressors, especially your better and bigger ones, will have starters on them. And Erick's going to give us an education today. Erick, we already talked that you have a double E from Penn State. That's Easy Electric.
Yeah, Easy Electric. We'll go with that. Yeah.
Okay. And in engineering. And no, he doesn't drive a train. He's an electrical engineer. But wait, locomotives are electric now. So can you drive a train?
Depends on how big the switch is.
Okay.
I thought all electrical people were conductors.
Oh! Only if you get shocked. So.
Okay. So
Lots of
And behind the camera is his sister and my wife, the camera wife. So, Erick, what do we have here?
What we have here is a Siemens starter. And this starter comes in a box with a cover.
Oh, the cover's over here. I got both parts in the box.
Yep. And
You want to tilt that up for me again, please?
we're going to talk today about how this starter works. And the parts and components inside the starter. And those things that are there for, safety reasons, and those things that are there for functionality. So, with that, we'll kind of start off with, if you're going to change the starter, okay, on your compressor, changing the starter is another tedious event. So, before you open the cover, I'm back to Bud's favorite saying of self-preservation or safety. Disconnect the power. Lock that power out, or make sure you're the only person that can turn it back on if you're working by yourself.
I've mentioned before I have my own padlocks, and I have the key. I padlock the equipment. I put my key in my pocket, and nobody's going to pry me.
That's exactly right. So, make sure that the power's off. Remove the cover from your starter. And here we are. Make a good diagram, or take your cell phone, take your picture, so that you have that, you know how you're wired whenever you start. Okay? Take several pictures. Make sure that you have the information, okay? Because it's very important. All you have to do is put it back together the way it was. Now, if we're going to work on the starter, there's a bunch of components in here. We're going to do some sketches, and we're going to talk a little bit about those and how they work and what's in there. So, this particular starter, again, 3-phase, 220 volt, 3-phase, because very few places have 230. It's low power. But, so we'll start with the line voltage coming in, okay? And we're going to have a disconnect switch or a circuit breaker. And here's your line voltage. Okay? Now, this line voltage comes in to contacts in the starter. Those contacts come out, they go through what's referred to as a thermal protection device. And we're going to talk about those a little bit individually, show you what they look like,
I
what they're for.
call those heaters
You-
when I'm talking to customers. Am I incorrect?
No,
Or
well,
is it just another name?
just another name,
Okay.
okay? And the reason that they have the heaters is that's how they work, okay? These devices, they're in the box here. These devices are calibrated, if you will, for the amount of amps that your motor is going to pull safely, okay? And they'll run your motor safely. When your motor starts to draw higher amps or too much energy, indicating that maybe you're having issues with the compressor, you know, something's wearing, it's harder to turn that compressor over. The thermal or heater, okay, generates heat as the electricity runs through it. So they're designed to run your motor at its normal load, normal current. When your motor starts to draw higher current, your thermal heats up. As it heats up, it trips the thermal overload block in
pass it
the
on.
starter. So
I'm okay.
this is this is your heater, and it happens to be, you know, these some of your manufacturers of different switches have a different style thermal or heater, but they all perform the same function. Now, once your thermals are in place, there's a reset button, and that's this guy right here. It will reset. When it resets, it closes a contact that's between these two lugs right here.
I have a question, Eric.
Yes.
Or would you prefer me to save questions and answers till the end?
No, I don't.
Okay,
We
okay.
can talk about it.
If we're heating up this part and it makes the switch open when there's too much power, why does that work?
Why does that work?
Yeah. Well, what does heat have to do with electric?
Well, the heat activates the solder pot, wherever they are. Oh, in this case, it's a bimetal. Okay, so this is a bimetal contact, so it's dissimilar metals. When one of them heats up, it opens the contact. It pulls the contact apart. Other manufacturers use a thermal with a melt pot in it, and that melt pot's made of a alloy that melts like solder. So once it gets so hot, it softens and the contact will open.
The solder falls away from the contact.
The solder allows the contact to rotate,
Oh, okay.
okay?
Nice word.
Yeah. So, anyhow, the functionality is that it opens the contact to the coil, which drops the starter out. It says, let's stop putting energy there. Let's stop trying to make this thing run. There's something wrong with it. And these thermals or heaters are wired. They're positioned here, so these are going to fit. Yeah, lay it back down so I can.
So you can see what you're doing.
There we go. It's going to sit in it. Okay.
This table's at guru height.
I'm going to get a step stool to work. A platform next time. So the thermal's going to sit in there like that. It's going to set in there on two screws. You have one on each leg of the motor because one leg could be drawing the high current and the other two don't. This is the safest way to do it. Some manufacturers won't, historically haven't put heaters on all three legs, but in this case we do, and that's the safest way to be. Now, this will not, if it's hot, this will not reset until it cools down. Okay, once it cools down, then you can reset this. You can try and restart your compressor or your motor. The best thing to do is do a thorough investigation prior to restarting. Because again, the fact that the thermals trip is an indicator that there's something wrong in the mechanical system somewhere. Or potentially electrical, usually mechanical. That's what the electricians say. It's mechanical.
Yeah, I know, I've dealt with enough guys like that. And then you find out the motor's going bad. Hey, will you come back and talk about motors? It's part of your 3-episode contract.
We can.
Okay.
We can talk about motors.
I'll try to have a motor here for next time.
That'd be nice. Okay, so the thermals, in this case, drive, let me just do this in red. Pick another color here. The thermals have contacts that I'm going to show them as a normally closed contact. And these are all wired together in series. And this is behind the scenes work. And these come out to 2 terminals right here. Those terminals are right here on the side of the starter. And well, we'll go one step further.
We'll get some stills of this later.
Yeah, this, when you dissect this starter, this is the contactor, this is your overload block, okay, or your thermal block. So they're actually 2 separate components that can come apart, so you could replace one or the other, but those contacts are part of your overload block. Okay, now, your starter is going to have a coil. This is your coil.
Now,
Okay, this coil
go ahead.
is made of a bunch of wire wrapped around.
Ooh, I came prepared.
Wrapped around. Look at that. It's a coil. So, what this coil does is there's a metal core, a laminated core that goes through here. And when you energize the coil by putting power on these 2 terminals, it pulls the core.
And the coil's
In this
not in
case-
this. That's probably the coil for this one.
This is the coil for that one. Okay, as it pulls the core, it energizes or closes these contacts, which tell, we didn't finish our green diagram here, okay? Which tell our motor to run. Okay, so energize the coil, pulls the contacts together, tells the motor to run. Simple? Simple. Okay, good.
I went out to a customer, he called and says, "But I'm tired of having a screwdriver stuck in my starter."
Not a good idea.
True story.
However,
I go out, the cover's off the machine, and he had a little screwdriver stuck beside this, had that pushed in and jammed the screwdriver, and when he wanted to turn the compressor off, he turned the power off at the breaker. And he said, "But I don't think this is a good idea to run," and he ran it for a month before he called me. And I thought you'd enjoy that. Yes, he didn't blow anything out because he would have been over pressure in the tank at times, and this is not a recommended procedure.
this is never a recommended procedure. If it doesn't energize on its own, there's a problem.
Yes.
And the starter is there, it's tied to, as we talked last time, the pressure switch is there.
Over here.
Yeah, okay. As we talked last time, the pressure
I put it
switch.
back on the part shelf.
The pressure switch is there, which is a safety for your compressor, which ties to your starter. Okay? So when we start looking at the circuit as this goes together, and again, this is a 3-phase starter, 3-phase machine, a little bit larger machine, it's going to have those safeties built into it. It's going to have that low oil pressure, so it's going to have a low oil switch, okay, which is normally closed at level. Okay, so it's tied into this circuit. It's going to have the pressure switch, And as we talked last time, this pressure switch is normally set 150 on, 175 off. So,
And that's for a two-stage machine. Single-stage machines will be 90 to 110. So normal depends on the compressor, but on your standard shop compressor, that's what it would be.
okay. So, again, these are going to tie together. Excuse me. L1. And now we're going to follow the circuit. We're going to this coil is going to tie through the thermals. It's going to tie through that low oil switch. It's going to tie through that pressure switch. And it's going to, we'll walk around. Tie to L2.
Now,
So,
when you take 110 volt and 110 volt, because this is 110 volt here, and that's 110 volt here, that coil would be 220. So what are we measuring between the legs?
220 volts.
Okay.
Okay? Between each set of legs. L1 to L2, 220. L2 to L3, 220. L1 to L3, 220. That's your three-phase power source. So what you're putting on the coil in this scenario is 220 volts on the coil. Okay? Again, larger machines, you're going to run 480 volts or 460 volts. Even larger machines, you're going to run 2300 volts or 4160 volts. And if you're running those, this is the wrong show to be watching.
Yes. This shows for the garage mechanic wanting to fix his own machine. So
There you go.
since that all being said, and we've got an idea what we're talking about here, this is not quite correct now, but let's do a little racing and make this a single phase 220 without a low oil shutdown.
Okay.
So do you want to
We
do
can
some
do that.
racing, or do you want to do,
Well,
because it's essentially the same idea, it's just got a few less wires.
right. Okay. So, 220, it's going to be L1 and L2, single phase. What'd you do with the eraser again? There it is.
Here, that's not for drinking.
Oh, really? Oh, we'll see if we can wipe this out, okay? We're going to take L3 away. Okay? And we're still going to keep a starter. We're only going to have 2 leads going to the motor. Now, in the case of your single phase starter, do you still have thermals in your starter? You do. There you go. So you still have thermals in your starter. Chances are, this switch isn't there.
That's actually a rarity on the machines I sell to the auto body and mechanic shops.
So, you have your on-off, you have your coil, still energizing your contactor to run your motor, and you have the thermals that heat up to tell you that you have a problem in the motor compressor system, or potentially something electrical in your motor. But, again, basics of the starters, again, a couple key things. Again, self-preservation, first and foremost. Always shut your power off. Take your picture. In case you didn't get your picture, this is going to tell you how things function and where to hook them up at. The information in your starter. There's also inside the can of the lid of the starter, you're going to see some information on thermal overloads. Now, your thermal overloads or your heaters are sized specific to the motor. And there's a little chart in there that's going to tell you what thermals should be in the starter for your machine. And that's going to come from your full load amps on your motor.
May I interrupt the double E guy?
You may.
On the current machines we're selling a lot of, the Atlas Copco 5 horsepowers, they have a starter with an adjustable heater. it's much more modern than this particular switch.
And that is a bimetal contact also, okay? However, it's electronically set.
Okay.
So you can adjust those heaters or those thermals within a range. So what you're going to have is a starter block or a thermal block that gives you the ability to set the amount of amps that your motors can pull before it trips out. But it's in a smaller range. So range being a high and low, just like we did here with the pressure switch. So again, you refer to your chart, refer to the information in the cover for your starter, and it's going to tell you where you can set that to match your motor for that machine. I'm sure that the manufacturer sets it
They come preset.
where they want it to be. But in the event you have to change that, you want to make sure you set that back where it belongs for your particular motor. Otherwise, your machine will shut down needlessly, or you can potentially burn up your motor or your machine by not having that protection on it.
Okay. Thank you.
Certainly.
Now, since we have some used parts here, there's not much left of this starter. This is a teaching. This is a teaching channel primarily, but we have some contacts in here that came out of this starter, and they were rather burned. Would you like to get a close-up camera wipe of these? And I screwed them together. And this coil is drawn here, but it won't do much good sitting in that side of the starter. Would you like to explain how this actually physically is in here?
Screwdriver.
Screwdriver. I'll get a screwdriver.
Okay, these should be nice and shiny. Okay, and this is the way the contacts would close. Okay, and in this case, they are burnt. That's going to cause a high resistance. And hex. That's okay. There's a slot. Found it.
Okay. Sorry, boss.
That's yeah. So anyhow, that's a high heat failure mode from the starter, and eventually those will quit closing or quit making contact. And when you energize the starter, your motor will not turn.
That's probably why I was called out on this one. And I said, I'll just change the starter.
Now, as we pull the starter apart, come on.
Now you would
There
be
we go.
taking pictures as you do
So-
this.
Here's the contacts, and you'll see that this has a contact, this has a contact. Those are the missing contacts. Okay, behind this, now we're going to take this apart. Jeez, you're taxing me, bud.
No, that's the way it is.
Yeah, I never tore one.
We all have brother-in-laws like this.
Do we? Okay, I'll
Some
keep that in mind.
Some better, some worse.
I'll keep that in mind. So we're going to remove this thermal overload block. And
You ever
just
done
to
this
get it
before?
out, not on the starter.
not on a toy like that, right?
Kind of thinking through it here as we go. So there's the thermal overload block.
If the thermal was the problem, we could just replace that and put a new one on there.
You can. Now we're going to lift the contactor out. Now.
On the back side, there's a couple screws.
Yepper. So the coil itself sits in here, and this magnetic core is what energizes. See, as I pull on that, can you see the contactor moving? Okay, that's what makes the contacts come together. So what we're going to do is take this apart the rest of the way, and we're going to put the coil back in it.
Now, this coil, you can check them with an ohm meter, right?
You can, but you know, I think you're stepping in the wrong direction at this point. If
Oh yeah, there's tons of problems with this starter.
yeah, you know.
That's why it got
But-
changed.
But at some point, you know, you're going to say to yourself, I'm outside my league. Okay.
That's why I call Eric.
Or that's when you call Bud and say, hey, I need you to fix my compressor. So, the core,
This way, right? Yeah.
there's the tabs where they sit, okay? And then we're gonna put this half back in. And again, that's a laminated core. You can see the laminated pieces in there. It's a stack up of pieces of metal, and it is very magnetic, so that this back in here, and then we're going to show you where those terminals end up for that coil on this starter. So it's back together, and right behind your terminal points for your contact are the terminal points for your coil. Okay, and again, as we talked a little bit earlier, voltages vary. This particular starter is designed to run on 480 volts. Okay, which means your motor and your source are going to be 480 volts. You cannot put this starter in a circuit that is, as we worked with today, 230 volts. Okay, because when you put 230 volts on that 440 volt coil, it draws high current.
Which will heat up the thermal block and throw the heater, or not even run the machine at all.
It should not run the machine at all. There won't be enough power to pull the coil in, but you have the potential to burn up your coil.
Yeah.
Now, if we had a good set of contacts, we could put them in this third position, but in this case, I'm just going to put this back together. Bud knows this is a teaching device, so he's not going to put it in anybody's machine. Again,
This will be going back on the shelf, and somebody will need parts, and I'll say, there it is.
so when you put your starter back in operation, you want to be very, very careful. You want to make sure that, again, refer back to your pictures that you took, look at the documentation, double check everything, verify it before you turn your power back on your system. Okay, safety first. If you are experienced with electricity and know how to use an ohm meter, that's great. You want to check for your shorts first. Make sure you don't have any shorts in your system. Before you energize, if not, rely on doing what you did, knowing that you put everything back where it belongs, and energize the system. If you have a problem, your breaker's going to trip, your fuses are going to blow, something in the safety circuit is going to shut this thing down and tell you that something's wrong.
Okay.
Okay?
Is there anything else you can tell us about a starter that's going to help out, our average guy in the audience that may be stuck on a Friday night and goes to YouTube and says, what can I find out? How do I fix this?
BR549.
Okay.
Again, if everything's hooked up the way it should be, put together the way it should be, then it's either going to work or it's not. And if it doesn't work, then there's, again, a lot of things we talk about. Your thermals, your reset. Once you put them thermals in there, you want to reset. In this particular starter, you have a manual trip. You can trip it, and then you can reset it, okay? Simple, mechanical, tear it apart, put it back together, watch where your wires are. That's the basics of what we're talking about. If we could get into,
We can go
metering,
we can go to the weeds if we wanted to. But,
yeah.
this is the basics of what a definite purpose magnetic starter contactor is, and we hope this helps educate some of our friends in the audience. And if you are in over your head, don't burn something up. Call an industrial electrician for this type of work. No offense to the residential electricians out there, but I've had more than one guy call me and go, hey, I'm going to hook my compressor up. I said, you want me to come out? You want me to recommend somebody? He says, oh, my electric coil wired up. And we get a guy that wires light circuits all day, walks in and says, what's this box? So get yourself an industrial electrician. If you're in over your head, and your regular electrician may look at it and go, what? So anyway, Eric, any last words of wisdom for today? Is that your wife calling you and saying supper's ready?
Supper's ready, man.
Okay.
That's time to eat.
Noticed your shirt. It's Johnson Schools. What's that?
It was a training course that I went to in one of my previous lives.
Oh, okay. So after college, you lived by Bud's rule number 4.
Bud has rules.
Bud has rules.
Oh.
Number 4 is never stop learning.
Never stop learning.
Yeah.
You know,
I'll tell you the other rules if you want to hear, but Bud's rule number 4 is never stop learning.
that's a good rule to have.
So
Good rule to have. Because every day you don't learn something is a wasted day.
I'll go with that. So
There you go.
now, since it's almost supper time, do you want to know what Bud's rule number 5 is? And this really is my rule number 5.
Don't be late for supper.
No.
Oh.
I don't stand in line for food. Hey, this is the Compressor Guru with Eric, the double E electrical guru. Eric McKay, my brother-in-law, great guy. I want to thank Eric for coming in, and I want to thank y'all for checking this out. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave questions, comments in the section below, and if I can't answer them, I know a guy that will. And thank you. Have a great day. God bless.
Eric will be back next spring for 2 more episodes. You see, he's now a snowbird. 1 episode will be on motors, and 1 episode will be on single and 3-phase power. Thank you for joining us today. God bless you and have a great day.